So let's have this conversation about mom guilt. This is Nikki Riley of Magazine founder. We the ultimate guide to mental wealth, normalizing conversation around mental health, healing, right, y'all, and removing them stickers one magazine at a time. Go ahead and request, and we can get started. Okay, that's okay. We're gonna get I like to get things started and have a conversation. And so the topic today is mom guilt, and as she tries to get together on her end, I'm gonna go ahead and just try to get the conversation started. So to get on the conversation, as we try to get her on here, many of us, as parents, even I know it's big for moms, but definitely for parents altogether, those who try to show up as their best self in parenting, we tend to high levels of anxiety, right? Just have those moments where we feel like we're not doing the best, or there's more that we can do. And then the whole big thing is when we need to take time out to prioritize ourselves, like we trying to pour from an empty cup, we get exhausted. And so I felt like this was a good conversation because I could talk about my own mom guilt, especially being a mom of a child who has mental illness. And I know my biggest thing was, especially when I wasn't sure if she was going through a moment of having like suicidal ideations, because my daughter had 6 attempts of suicide. So, and during that time when she actually, okay, here we go. She's coming up, but okay. He was actually first diagnosed, or first had her first attempt to suicide. I was just having a conversation. I said, let me just start talking. How you doing, sweetie?
Hi, Nikki.
Listen, as we get it together, let me go ahead and start this conversation. So I was just sharing my perspective of, I know when I definitely felt mom guilt. I was in a abusive marriage, right? And when you're not able to, like, I'm in my own mess, right? I'm in my own mess, and this is real talk because I just went through therapy. I didn't know that I still had this until my oldest daughter, she's 26 now, and I was trying to have a conversation with her. And she was like, I didn't feel like you could protect me. And it just broke me. It really like did something deep to me, because I also carried that guilt because I felt like I couldn't provide a safe home like I wanted to for them to not go through the traumatic things. I had those shameful and regretful moments of that I downplayed the red flags. You know, you get in relationships, you offer yourself, right? Just going back and like when you feel like you could change things or fix things, and you don't think about stuff like that, like when you're going through your own relational stuff, how your child is impacted. And I didn't realize that it was a trigger for her mental health. You know what I mean? And so these are all the things I started. This mom guilt really came on me, not so much when I was in my mess, but really now as I'm in therapy and I'm healing, and I'm like, dang, I could have did things different. Or even when she had her first attempt at suicide, I'm like, I'm so in my own mess. I missed her own, that she was struggling, that she was being bullied. I didn't know. I'm in my own, situation, my domestic situation. And so I had that guilt of just not overlooking the symptoms. I almost lost her to suicide because she was going through her own bullying and things like that. And really like feeling like I broke the kids, like the older ones, like I broke them, But I really needed time for myself to heal. Like I really needed time for myself to get myself together. I couldn't even show up whole for them because I was already going through my own stuff. So this is something I was just like, hey, let me just talk about some of my mom guilt. So as I process all this in therapy and I gain a different perspective, that I was a good mom. Like even though I was in my own mess, like I still took them to church. I still prayed with them. I still read the Bible with them. I still made sure I did quality time with them. I did all these things as a, like I worked with what I had at that time. you know. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So, hi, welcome,
Hi.
Queen.
You know,
um,
it was about to not let us be great, but God's grace was like, let you unmute
yes,
your phone and we're here.
I prayed before we got on here. So I was like, listen, it must be some good stuff that's gonna be, it's some healing. We're gonna get up and, you know what I mean? Like, give us some deliverance. So let me just introduce you. Anissa Williams, she's the a licensed clinical social worker. She is the founder of Momology
Momology, yeah.
Mental Wellness Club, MMW Club, supports mothers and social emotional care during preconceptions, pregnancy, postpartum, and parenting. So she is committed to holding moms as they heal. She creates that safe space and supportive space. She's certified for postpartum support, y'all. And so, and she deals with anxiety disorders, the trauma associated around maternal mental health. So welcome, Queen. Thank you so much for joining me on this platform. It was a blessing to be able to feature you, to highlight what you're doing, and especially over this particular topic where, like I said, so many people, I mean, so many women, um, definitely, but there, like we talked about this can be for a parent, period,
Yeah.
that guilt. So I think I just want to kind of like go straight into, let's dive into the true reasons for that mom guilt and how it's sometimes it can stem back to their own childhood. So if you could just give a little bit of what is mom guilt for those who, like, you know, some already made, like, I might be feeling this. So let's break that thing down for them.
Yeah. So first, I just want to normalize mom guilt. Many of us experience it, and I'm speaking for myself too, because there's this expectation on us on what a mother should be like, and just a parent in general. And so, oftentimes, there's messages, whether that's from the society, whether that's from within your spaces, your family, maybe the grandmothers, the aunts in the family, telling you this is what you should do with your baby, this is what you shouldn't do with your baby,
Mm,
as you are still trying to interpret like who you are as an individual, but then also like, who is this little person? You know, that's a lot of pressure to have, that I am responsible for how this individual turns out.
mhm,
Everything that I do reflects in them. Everything that they do reflects in me. And when we slow down and really process
mhm,
that, that's a lot to hold.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so
mhm,
because of these expectations, you're trying to perform at a level based off of what you tell yourself or what someone is telling you that can feel as if it's unachievable. So,
mhm,
mom guilt is oftentimes related to unrealistic expectations
mhm,
that we've placed on ourselves,
mhm.
whether that's conscious or unconscious.
That's that's real talk. And that even goes down to, um, I wanted to put like a visual of, you know, you have that mom who able to uh be there for their children, put the cute little notes in their lunch bag, put the little happy faces on their pancakes in the morning, maybe so involved in, you know, the PT, you know, parent
Yeah.
teachers conferences and soccer moms and all that. And then you have the mom that definitely just do their best. They show up, they provide the necessities, the roofs over their heads, making sure they got food to eat, you know, nice clothes or whatever. And they still are good moms. You know how sometimes you find yourself trying to put yourself in a set, like, am I really, you know, I'm only able to do XYZ. Maybe they're a single mom, or maybe they can only show up to a certain degree. But then you see another mom who goes above and beyond. You're still a good mom, you know. So like you said, unconscious, but I know I've heard that before. um
So, Nikki, that comparison,
mm,
you know, you see other moms around you. Like, it makes me think about, if you all remember, Claire Huxtable,
mhm,
you know, like she just, with grace and how she handled things, and even for herself, and she looked great while she was
mhm,
doing it too. And then she
mhm,
was able to have these conversations with her children, and she was loving, she was cooking dinner, she was going to work. Like, when you see that, it's like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. But we
mhm,
don't take into account everyone's experience is different. Their environment that they're coming from is different. And so what you see Claire doing may not apply to you.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. So I know you had I just kind of like go and I looked up some of your on one of your posts you saying like when you need that time away. So let's say you're a new mom, you have a new baby, born baby. One of the posts you did, you said letting your kids marinate in the tub is me time.
Yeah.
I thought that was, can you elaborate? Like I really thought that was, I know it hit home for many people.
Yeah. So I think with parenting, oftentimes, especially like with newborns, you're feeling as if like I don't have time for myself because baby needs to be fed, baby needs to be changed. Maybe I am like fixated on I have to keep checking on them. Are they breathing? Are they okay? I don't know what to do. And so you can overwhelm yourself. And so sometimes when it's they're in that high chair and they're eating, they're in that tub and they're being bathed and they're playing. Anytime you can find those pockets or windows of opportunities where it's like, let me recharge and do something for myself. And it may be you're reading your book right there next to the tub, or it may be where they're sitting in the high chair, you got your favorite TV show on. We literally have to be intentional on how we make space for ourselves as parents, because if we're not, you can get so consumed and wrapped up in your child that it impacts not only them, but you as well.
I agree. Do you feel that some of, because I know like overcoming or identifying mom guilt, what the severity of what mom guilt is, do you feel like it's like, can it stem back to maybe how you were raised or their parenting strategy, that you feel you have to do things different or very well or better than what your parents said?
Yeah, and I'll share just personally. I think my mom's on here watching too, and so my mom always about us. Like everything she do is for us. Even to this day, as adults, it's like my kids come first. I don't play about my kids.
Yeah.
And so today, as an adult woman who is a parent, having those conversations with her that I'm a little different than her. I still make space for myself. And sometimes it can be conflicting because how she sees and views how I should be with my daughter is not the same. And so when I do find time to spend time with my friends or take that trip, sometimes she's checking in like, well, what about your daughter? What about your daughter? And so I have to say, she's good. She's taken care of. She has other people in the village that can show up and step in, because I'm a single parent too. And so I need that time away sometimes to just refuel. I'm trying to collect my thoughts of like what's going on with her. I'm checking in with myself, like what am I doing? But it's having that conversation. You know, my parenting does not look like your parenting. And sometimes we agree to disagree. And then sometimes we just have to take our time apart and then come back together. But I think that's what we need more of, is spaces where parents can really talk about what they're grappling with. Like, I want to be here, but sometimes I don't enjoy motherhood. You know, I love my baby, but I don't enjoy the parts of mothering because it feels like it's defined that we have to give all of ourselves. And I talk a lot about mom identity. Like, I'm not just a mother. I do X, Y, and Z. I'm a part of this, this, and this. But how do I still stay true to self and this individual I chose to give birth to and raise and not get lost, you know?
That part right there. And even like you said, the identity or identifying, like you're saying, different from your upbringing to you, yourself, your parents. It's okay. Like, I think people feel bad, you know, parents, period. And, you know, moms, when you just said it, I don't enjoy I don't enjoy parenting right now. I'm not feeling this parenting thing. I mean, you know what I mean? And that guilt of like, hey, just because I said this, do that make me a bad mom? No, like right in this moment, like it's times that you really enjoy and like, the goodness of parenting, but then it gets very hard, you know. And I know for me, raising, a child with mental illness and having, going through all that with her, I felt guilty when I took time
for me, like, I'm like, I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. You know, I'm not enjoying it. Like, this is not fun. What is fun about it? Like, this is hard. Like, and now, okay, God, you equip me with this, and obviously, I'm gonna do my best to care for her and be there for her. And no doubt, I love her to life, right? But am I enjoying this right now? No, I'm not. You know, like, no. So that part where you just saying being okay to verbalize that and not carry that guilt of just saying right now. And so I do having a village. Let's talk about that. Like, how important is that to have a village, especially if you have a child with disabilities, or you know, or you may have twins, or just being able, how important you feel like building, because the village may not always be family. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I'm assessing parents, one thing I always ask them, was this pregnancy planned or unplanned? Because there's a lot of thoughts and feelings that come with that, you know, people were trying to conceive, or people were, you know, I had no idea that this happened. This is a surprise to us. And so oftentimes we don't ask that question, and people got some feelings and some thoughts behind that, and they're trying to figure it out. And so I think even just asking that question to yourself, how do I feel about this, bringing life into the world? But then looking at, if I'm with someone, like I'm in a relationship or I'm co-parenting, what does that dynamic of the relationship look like? Oftentimes I see parents are not talking to one another about what are our value systems, how do you feel in regards to raising children? And I think you should have those conversations before you even consider having children, but that's not something that always happens. But let's begin to explore that. And then if for some reason, if you're a single parent, if you do have help within the house, it's okay to reach into grandparents, aunties, cousins, your friends. But the big part of mom guilt and why it stays so silent is because people aren't talking, and people feel it. Because I know, because we're having this conversation now, and you're in spaces and we talk about it. But I think the more that we highlight it, the more people will feel open to asking for help. So that's why it's so important to have a village, and multiple people ask for what you need. So if it's, grandma, can you pick up so-and-so after school one day? And then someone else may be helping, you know, I need help like after school with snacks or something. You need to identify what your needs are, but it takes being honest with yourself first before you can even ask for help. And oftentimes when we don't have that honesty with ourselves, we bury it, we stuff it, we suppress it. And then that's when you start seeing some mental health symptoms like depression, anxiety, that really rise up and impact people being able to parent how they would like to.
What about those moms who want to do it all? Like,
that is a thing.
And that's
that is a thing.
Part of that, and that I know, I heard about some of the mom guilt go hand in hand, like those do it all moms, but have to be able to recognize when they starting to feel burnt out. You know, like, I'm gonna do everything, knowing you're already feeling it, you're overwhelmed, you're doing the most, but I'm gonna do it all mom. Let's talk about that do it all mom.
So you got the ones, we got mompreneurs, you know, they're running businesses, they got baby on the hip, maybe the children, getting them off to school, showing up to PTA meetings, showing up within their relationship, showing up for their community. But then what I always tell people to ask, do I have the capacity?
That's good.
You know, because sometimes I may have to say no to some things to say yes to myself. And I even do that with my daughter sometimes, like, hey, I don't got the energy right now, you know? And so she's 12. Yeah, she's 12.
My daughter's 15, and I've actually said to the words, and I'll say it just like that, I have nothing for you right now, baby. You know, and we're in tune now, understanding what that means. Like, I've really done exhaust, you know, I just need some time. You know, if you're able to verbalize that to your children, I just need some time. But I think also being able to verbalize that to your village, your support system, I need some time, and not feeling guilty, you know, or why I need time.
Yeah.
And what I have read, I think it was it's the Dr. Nina Kaiser. She shared a valuable tip about it said, as mothers, it's essential to make room for our own joy.
Mm-hmm.
That part, it's essential to not lose yourself in motherhood. You want to talk about that? Elaborate on that.
So as much as we would love it, our babies leave our home one day, you know? And I think that the role of a parent is preparing them to go out into the community, to go out into the world. And so I think that also plays a part in why we put so much pressure on ourselves, because how they're showing up, again, like as I said earlier, is reflecting back on us. And so telling yourself that there are seeds that I am planting with this person, because at the end of the day, they're going to make their own choices. You know, they're going to create their own identity. But it's our hope that we instill some values, we instill some knowledge into them where they can critically think about their choices. But if we put all of ourselves into our children, because I think that's what happens when our kids get older and then they don't choose how we want them to or do how we want them to do, we resent that. Are you ever heard, all I've done for you, you know, I did all this for you. But we have to remember, our children didn't ask us to do those things.
That's good. That's good. Pushing back from those being realistic about your expectations, and your beliefs and decisions of what you have for your children. That's so good. Let's talk about the breast, formally, or even the breastfeeding moms. Because people got so much to say about the breastfeeding, moms, and trying to balance, the what is it, weaning off. I know it's like the guilt. I've heard this conversation, like, you know what I mean? I'm breastfeeding, but it's time to. How do you talk to like the mom, like that guilt? It's some guilt. I've heard them speak of this, and that's the only reason why I'm bringing it up in reference to the breastfeeding mom. The comments of how long you should breastfeed and the guilt, the things that go around that perspective of the breastfeeding moms. I know, just for those that might be listening, if you want to speak on that.
Yeah, I think again, we'll hear terms like breast is best, and so then people make options on what they see fit for their birthing experience or, the feeding experience. But what I tell parents, just like that child is going through a developmental stage, you're going through a developmental stage. Also considering your body. That's a lot to be given to someone. That could be exhausting when you are breastfeeding, although it's a healthy alternative to ensure that your baby gets nutrients. But I think it's between that parent to have that choice to say, maybe I don't want to share my body with you anymore. Maybe it's time to prepare you to move to the bottle, move to solids. But there's going to be some feelings of loss there. And I think that's okay to normalize, like, I miss my baby. Like, that's a bonding moment. That baby's head close to your heart. That may be opportunities where you get to talk to your baby. You may be doing storytelling. Or it's the reality of, like, things are changing. My baby's getting older. My baby's not such a baby anymore. But what happens is, again, stuffing those feelings, not identifying what you feel, not saying it out loud to say, I'm no longer going to breastfeed you anymore. And that bothers me because you're my little baby and maybe I still want that connection to you. But that also happens when we send them off to school, their first day of daycare, or like that first moment. It's that realization that something's changing.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. Do you think mom guilt stem from any like personal insecurities?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think it's individualized. So someone may be feeling as if I was supposed to breastfeed until they were this age. And maybe I couldn't do that. Personally, I just knew I was going to breastfeed my daughter. And then when we tried at the hospital, and it did not feel good to me,
Mm-hmm.
I asked for that bottle. And I felt bad because like I went through all this preparation, and so it was the loss of this expectation of this is what it was going to look like. And that's not what it looked like. So I had to readjust. That is something that happens in parenting a lot. We have this expectation. We have to readjust.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Yeah. What about like pressures from family members in parenting? Do you feel like that contributes to the mom guilt?
All the time. I don't know if you saw, but on social media, as we were going into the holidays, I saw memes that said, please don't come ask me about my child and why they do this. Please don't approach me about my child and what's happening. Please don't say this to my child. And so it normalized for me that oftentimes when we get in those spaces, that's where all those opinions come. And so when I talk to my parents, I ask them, are these people that volunteer to babysit? Since they have so many opinions, are these people that are showing up for you and your family? Because sometimes we have to set those boundaries with individuals to say, you're sharing a lot and offering, but what are you doing to help us? Where's the help?
That's like the
it's one thing to say things, but are you going to show up here?
Exactly. I think like with the social media, even doctors, even organizations around what moms should do and should not do, it creates that feelings of inadequacy. Even stuff like, okay, maybe you feel like if I need to get some stuff done, so I'm gonna put my kid in front of the TV or whatever the case is, or give them a tablet or a phone. But it's like, but you need to limit screen time and show more educational apps, but if you put on I don't know, Big Red Dog, I don't know, that's what engage them, but they'll make you feel bad because you putting, it's not educational. Or I think getting tons of exercise. I can just go down the list.
But Nikki, you know what? As you say that, we forget we never know what that individual is internalizing. So what if she needed to sit that child down for a moment to watch whatever on that tablet to gather her thoughts because she's irritable,
And to keep from lashing, I think it's okay. I would say to you, don't feel bad if you have to engage them otherwise, to regroup, to recharge yourself, so you can show up as the best self that you can for your child. This will reduce yelling or coming off wrong or any form of emotional, mental, abuse that you don't intentionally try to do for your child, but just because you're overwhelmed or you feel yourself getting burnt out. This is when you can't respond to your child like you need to, so it becomes unhealthy. So I think taking care of yourself, but not not waiting until it get that part when you just burnt out, or when a child. So I'd rather you not feel guilty about taking time for yourself to recharge yourself or whatever you need to do than to harm your child. I think that's a better perspective to look at it. If you say, I need to put you right here for a minute, watch this show, I need to do this for you, and so you can regroup, get yourself together.
And you don't have to tell that child that. You may say, Mommy's stepping away for a couple minutes, I'll be back. Or you may be telling yourself that, we talk about, we put kids in time out, but what if parents need, their own time out?
That part, yes, time out. We need time out. We need time to get ourselves together. So what about the mom guilt from just work? Like the ones who just, you got to provide, like you got to do what you got to do for your kid. But they feel bad because they can't spend as much time with them. You want to elaborate on that part? Like, what would you say to someone?
I will say, I think the pandemic exposed us a lot in regards to people was trying to find that balance of how do I get to work? How do I take care of my kids? And so I'm seeing even now, parents are struggling now that we're going back in person because they adapted to working from home. I can go and move about and still get my work done and show up not only for my employer, but my children as well. And so when we think about, I'm trying to provide, I'm trying to take care of these kids, it can be a lot to consider of what if I make the wrong decision in regards to I'm working too much, but if I don't work enough, the bills don't get paid, or they can't have access to these certain things. And I tell people it's never really a balance. You just have to figure out what works out for your family.
I've heard someone say balance is not about balance, it's about harmony. Like a flow.
Yes.
You know, because we always talking about what that balance. I mean, I know it was a study, I always try to do that, but like a study saying it's like, you know, just in a day, like so many parents working moms feel, oh, it's a lot of guilt associated with work interfering with their family and how they showing up, you know, for their household, not just the children, but, you know, spouse as well. And that's a huge part of, you know, the guilt, like wanting to, so even the you know, when you get someone who's saying, hey, I want you to stay home, like feeling like, I don't want to be an at-home mom. I want to work. I don't want to be at home mom. I don't want to just be home with my kids. I want to work, you know. I hear guilt around that. You want to elaborate on that?
Yes. I also wanted to say too, this is about advocacy for ourselves as parents as well. So asking for what you need. So parental leave is something that impacts our country as well. We don't have any policies in place really to allow parents after that post-birth to have that time off. And then also mental health days. What if you need to call in for a mental health day because you need time to recollect and gather? So is this something that you can say to your employer that, can we incorporate this into our employee package? And necessarily, I don't have to share what's going on, but there's some processes in place where I'm protected, you know?
I got you. Yeah. And I also felt like too, I had seen someone on here saying I miss a lot by, you know, basically by working all the time. You have to be true to yourself. I would say that you have to be true to yourself because it takes a certain patience. You know what you have to give. Are you that mom that can stay home all day, you know, do before they go to school? You know, they're not school age, so you're doing all of it all day, every day. Are you that mom, or is it okay to say, you know what, I need to go ahead and put you in daycare, early childhood development, whatever, because I'm that mom that I need my 8 hours that I go to work so I can show up as my best self for my kid. I know there's guilt around that. Like, I'm not that at home mom. I wanna be out there in the working field.
It's preference, Nikki. It's a preference. How we show up as parents is going to look different for all of us. Personally, I am not a stay-at-home mom. Like when we were doing the Zoom education and everything, I was like, I can't wait till you go back to the classroom because honestly, that was my space. Like that was my time to engage with adults, have adult conversations. You know, I wouldn't necessarily call it an escape, but that was my space. And now then it felt like my space was invaded because of this pandemic and what happened and trying to adjust. Some people, they will love showing up and being the stay-at-home parent that, you know, is able to keep the house intact and show up in certain capacities and ways. And then there's some people that, no, I would rather go to work. Neither is right or wrong. It's based off of what is best for you and your family. And then one thing I would add, if your child is of a certain age, are you checking in with them just to kind of see, like, how does this feel for you? Are you also normalizing, yes, I work a lot. This is a lot on us, but how do I make time possibly in other ways?
I agree. So how would you say for someone to overcome mom guilt?
I don't know if you truly overcome it. I think you work through it.
Okay, that's good.
You know, there's something always that's gonna be shifting and changing in our lives in regards to parenting, because as long as our kids from the womb to the tomb, you know, there's something going on with parenting, and it's an adjustment. So I will say, please check in with yourself when things are shifting to say, what is working for me? What is working for my child? What do I need? What do they need? And sometimes those two things may not align. But at the end of the day, how do we still like have this healthy relationship? Because that's what it is too. It's a relationship. Relationship with your child. What does that look like? And it may not look like what you had as a child. So you're learning and you're unlearning as you go through it.
Yeah, I think like that unreasonable expectations to the form of happiness that comes, behind like, so if you're not that in that total happiness that's supposed to be attached to motherhood, I think guilt comes in like, oh, I'm sitting in something right now, I'm feeling a certain kind of way, to feel joyful all the time. Like it's mess, things can be going on even in your own personal life that I think too can play, show up, where you get that guilt or the true feelings. I can't say no other way. That true feelings or what you're feeling at that moment or whatever may be going on that you're not able to show up as your whole self for your kid.
One thing I would also add, you may have to redefine what motherhood is based off of, what you grew up to know it to be, what you witnessed, what you've been told, but what's actually happening. And then this other word I'm sure some people have heard is reparenting. I have to reparent myself. Our inner child, because we all have like that little girl in us, that little boy in us that can creep up as a parent, where it's making things very clear that, oh, that wasn't right, what I saw as a child, or like, that was good stuff. I'm taking that with me. I'm not taking that with me. So sometimes it's like, I'm trying to take care of little Anna in me, even as I'm bringing up this little girl as well. That's hard. So that's why it's so important to have your support. That's why I do the work that I do as far as creating space for mothers, particularly, because you really need to be able to flush out those thoughts and feelings that you're having because it impacts your behavior.
What about that perfectionism? Trying to be perfect.
You know what that's related to? Anxiety.
Okay.
This constant worry, this thought of, I got to do this, I got to be the best. But really, those are typically unrealistic expectations that we put on ourselves. So you're going to have to really get to the root and say, where did this message come from?
Yeah, where did it come from? Yeah. So basically, it's okay to feel, that you can't pour, like you don't have it to show up. It's okay to take that time out if you're feeling like you're about to be burnt out. It's okay if you not doing everything perfect.
Mom guilt is not a negative. It's a real thing. When it becomes challenging is when shame gets attached to it and you hold it in silence. That's when mom guilt becomes overwhelming, and when people begin to struggle internally. And that's why I think there's so many conversations about it, but really we're not putting action into it to say, you know what, we all have mom guilt, but then let's think about a plan to work through this.
I mean, because the reality of it is it's going to be some anxiety. It's going to be moments of it being chaotic. It's going to be some stress involved. You're going to not always have the best in, this fluffy days, right? But like you're saying, acknowledging and accepting that part and finding an antidote to making things go, flow into harmony. So that's so good. I like that.
And sometimes you find your flow and then something happens and you got to readjust again.
Throw your flow because, got to reset. And it's okay to have to. You can reset as many times as you need. You can recharge as many times as you need. But the important part, like you're saying, you need that break to connect, to get back to yourself, whatever baseline normalizing of yourself,
Yeah.
to
And
being
Nikki, I'm
mm-hmm.
sorry.
No, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, when you say get back to yourself, we're ever so evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that. You,
Mm-hmm. I
you're
like
you're you're
that.
discovering new things, and so it may be I got to readjust again and
Mm-hmm.
again, and
Mm-hmm.
especially as my child.
And as they
It's
grow,
yep.
it comes a different, you know, each phase. Each phase. I got adult ones. I have a teenager. You know, each phase brings something different. But you got to take time out to love on you. Got to take time to make time, prioritize you, show up for you, so you can show up as your best self for your children.
And it may
And
look different if you have multiple children. What you're doing for child over here may not look the same for child over here. And sometimes that's overwhelming too, because we can feel guilt that I'm giving my daughter this, but I'm not giving my son this, or vice versa. And then I think it's also having that conversation with yourself that you identify this child has certain needs that this child doesn't. And this is why I do what I do.
yeah,
I love you both, but I have to also adjust how I parent you all based off of you all's needs.
that's good. That's good. Um, and then responding to your, I mean, I guess giving yourself some grace too.
Yes.
I think that's so important. Like giving yourself some grace and being kind to yourself. Um, you know, responding to yourself with love and acceptance, and letting yourself know that it's okay. I think it's care. I mean, it's key. You know, and I can't say it more. Being a good mom does not mean that everything has to be perfect.
Yeah. The individuals that I work with and they have negative thoughts, we all do. I always ask them, how does that thought serve you?
Yeah, yeah. Replacing those negative thoughts with you know, positive ones. You know, and we talked about that work. Something like, hey, I'm a better mom because I do get time. I'm working. I get time to step away for a minute. I can show up as my best self and contribute in the best way you can as a mom. I think that's so key. Um, so I think the best way, like you were saying, you know, we want to combat the mom guilt, all the way around, and the transitions in life, like you said, with the kids and adjusting. So you want to talk about, like, I guess the resilience part. I know, building that, or, you know, talking around that as it pertains to the mom guilt.
Yeah. Find your circle. I think is going to be very helpful in that resiliency. And so, like you said, as far as giving yourself that grace, it's that
Mm-hmm.
permission to say, like, it's okay if I don't get it
Mm-hmm.
right. You know, I'm learning through this journey of motherhood too. And so I'm not expected to know everything. Or
Mm-hmm.
do I feel comfortable reaching in and asking questions to others?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say choose people that you feel like you trust, choose people that you feel like are also going to give you that grace and room to grow as well, because this is a huge responsibility, you know, the care for another human
Mm-hmm.
being. And so that resiliency part is also a part of celebrating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take
Yeah.
moments to celebrate, like, oh my gosh, like I got the kids up on time off to school today and I made it to work on time? Celebration, that's a
Yeah.
win.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and spend, you know, having those supportive friends, like you said, and family, um, you know, take it, you know, even sleep. I know I could just go down a list, like so
Yeah.
many things that just make a big part of just being able, you know, prioritizing sleep, exercising, meditating, you know, praying, you know, making sure your circle's tight, you know, with those supportive friends and family. And just, I know big for me, because I was a perfectionist, letting that go, letting that perfect thing go, you know, because when I realized that I didn't realize how much mom guilt was real until I went through it myself. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to just leave to these moms that might tune in later, who experiencing mom guilt at any point?
Absolutely. So self-care, I know we talk about that a lot, and I want you to know that's an individual plan. And so take your name and put it in and say, so like for me, on Anicia Care, you know, so you can really personalize it to yourself as I identify what I need and this is what I do. So if you need to go get your hair done once a week, or if you need to take a trip to the library, or if you need to get the kids in bed by 7:30 because the rest of the night is yours, do what you need to do, because I can't give my children what I don't have. A lot of parents are pouring and don't even have anything, you know, in their body to give. And that's oftentimes too what is connecting to that guilt of like, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out on this experience.
Yeah.
You got to keep pouring into your cup because you're giving so much in other spaces too. And so it's okay to love on yourself as well.
So good, so good, so good. I don't know if anyone have any questions before we get off. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. We want to just have conversation on mom guilt, and just provided a lot of antidotes that can be effective, because mom guilt looks different for everyone. So I hope this was helpful. I'm just going to go through here and see if anyone had any questions. And I know, like I said, and then being connected to social media is big on just trying to make it what that looks like as a mom. It weighs heavy on a lot of people too.
Yeah. And I will say, unfollow those pages that don't serve you. So if you find yourself every time you're on a certain page and it weighs on you because you feel like you should be showing up in that way, like, because I'll be honest, social media can make it feel all glamorous, and sometimes it's not always like that. And so if you have to silence that page for a little bit as you get yourself together, that's okay. Like, follow the real pages, you know, that's going to talk about, I love this space, but sometimes it's unenjoyable to me. A page that's going to give you support and tips. Really create and carve out what's coming in as far as like how I identify, but then also like my brain is encoding all of this information. So you really need to be intentional as well of what you're allowing your mind to conceive.
Agree. I agree 100%. And for those moms, I know someone was on here about going back to work. You are not abandoning your baby if you feel like you want to go back to work or need to go back to work. You are not a bad mom. So just replacing those negative thoughts, like you said, with those positive thoughts. I do know someone on here was just talking about, like, so you are not abandoned. Like, people really put that big on, like, oh, you should be with your child while you're a certain time from this age to that age. You shouldn't leave them alone. You shouldn't this, you shouldn't that. You, the only person to know what's best for you and your child, and be okay with that. I think that is so big and carries so much weight. Thank you so much, Anicia. You've been a blessing. Any questions? If you have any questions, you can drop any questions. Anicia Williams, she's a licensed clinical social worker. So y'all better, this is the time I'll be like, you can ask some of those good questions that you may just have, that you know that you just kind of been feeling a certain kind of way and just want to get a perspective on it. From depression, anxiety, this is associated with mom guilt, negative thoughts, overdoing it or overscheduling and overworking, because I know that's a belief of moms. They got to do the most. But any questions before we get off? Let's see. No. So I say, great tip, Anna. Gave some hearts. Thank you, ladies. We appreciate y'all joining.
Yeah, stay connected too, because maybe you have a question later, or maybe you're interested in follow-up care and need to be directed. Available for that as well.
Yeah, I knew one question that, and I think this is very, very important to touch on: the mom guilt associated around miscarriages and stillborns. Let me take a breath with that one. Because the expectations to feel joyful and having a healthy newborn, even if they born with disabilities, even, because, you talk about the miscarriages and stillborn, but then you even have some that's born with health challenges.
Yeah.
The regret, the guilt.
The mom guilt that I'm struggling to conceive. Yeah.
So, that just dropped in my spirit. And so that obviously was like, I need to maybe, you know, if you want to touch on that, because mom, we talked about all the mom guilt of the parents that have the parents and the babies and everything, but we got mom guilt around, you know, losses of children for miscarriages and stillborn, and like you're saying, unable to have a mom. I mean, to be a mom, to have a baby. You want to talk about that?
So one time out of the year, September, is infant loss month. And then, you know, oftentimes we'll highlight pregnancy loss. One time I don't feel like is enough, you know. So however you see fit to honor that experience, I encourage you to do that, especially if you feel like I want to talk about it, if you feel like I want to create a space within my home, you know, to just honor that this child is not here, this child was supposed to be here, or to honor that I still don't know how I feel about it. Individuals feel guilt when they do have a baby that reaches full term and they bring them into this world. And then it's like, but I still feel a way because this other child didn't get to be here. Really honor yourself and what you feel. You know, oftentimes we hear say their name, say that baby's name. That's so important, you know. And I think you're going to teach people around you how to also, can we talk about this? Because that's what happens too. People are afraid to like check in with you to see how you're feeling. And so you are going to show them by honoring yourself and then honoring that loss too.
Those secret feelings, those it's not uncommon, but those are those feelings, those secret feelings, like you said, they keep to themselves. You know, regret and, you know, and wishing, you know, the healthiness and so forth as it pertains to you know, like you said, life. I mean, that's like a natural thing. You want to have a kid, right? You want to experience that, and you know, that just dropped in my spirit. So I was just like, you know what, hey, we not done yet. Like I felt, hold on, I got another question here, but let's see.
What do you say to your child when they indicate uncertainty about life? I'm interpreting that question that your child is curious about, like always being here on earth, or what does it look like when we leave this earth? I think it's important to think about what you feel comfortable with talking to your child about. So if you come from a spiritual background, what does that look like in regards to what happens when we're no longer here on this earth? There are books out here as well. It's something called With the String, and I'm about to Google it for you, but I'm going to suggest that and put it in the chat. But it talks about there's this string that is always attached to one another, and you can't see it. It's invisible. But whether I'm here with you physically or here with you in spirit, we're always connected. That's something that I always recommend for parents to share with their children, that there is a form of connection, that I may not be here, but we're always connected as far as other adults. So that's a really good book about grief and loss too.
And we have another question. A mom saying her guilt, is she struggling is finding time for herself while raising a toddler boy.
My suggestion to you, and this is what I suggest to individuals, write down your schedule, because sometimes we need to see it on paper to see where our time is going. And then sometimes you may see that I have windows where that may be where I incorporate my time. Even if it starts off as 5 minutes, that's still your time. And you may see that you build it up over time, especially as your child gets older. I do think you find some space for yourself, or more space, but really put it on paper. And I say from Sunday all the way through to Saturday, really look at that time, and then also identify individuals that may be able to step in for you too, whether that's family or friends, someone you trust with your child. And it may be, can you keep them for an hour? And you pick whatever you want to do for yourself.
That's good. That's good. Let me see. Is there any more questions? Nope. I think we. Okay. Oh, any advice for a mother who is Oh, this is good.
Oh,
This is
yes.
good, Washington. Any advice for a mother who is recovering addict that is now parenting out of guilt? That is that right there. Because I'm an actually recovery specialist, and so
Do you want to answer that?
no, you go ahead and touch on
Okay.
it. Okay, but that's a good one. Thank you for asking. Thank you. This is the platform for that. Go ahead. I will give it to
Yeah.
you.
So recovery is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes parents are always reminded of their mistakes or
Mm-hmm.
their absence of not
Mm-hmm.
being there. And it may not necessarily come from that child, but if there's other caregivers involved, other family members, they do like disheartening behaviors that doesn't help that parent reunify
Mm-hmm.
with that child. And so I would suggest, if there's other individuals involved, how can we all get on one page where not only are we supporting that child, but we're supporting that mom? And then like once that parent has allowed themselves to apologize or try to, make way with moving forward, let that go. We have to make sure we let that go and allow them to do that. But then also, that mother harboring that guilt also is impacting that behavior. So again, when I said earlier, those thoughts, feelings lead to the behavior. Checking in with that mother and say, what is this thought that you're having about yourself? Is it inadequacy? Are you feeling that I have to show up in this capacity to make this person forgive me or to accept me as their mother? Because it may be from this day, this is how I show up as your mom, and saying, I may not have showed up in that way in this part, but I want to start here today and see if that child is open to that, or see if those other people involved are open that too. But we can't continue to hold that person in that space anymore because it's not helpful. We may also be contributing to them relapsing, when we do that too.
Yeah, and it's definitely difficult, like you're saying. You're in your own, like you said. I think it's because I am her oldest, raising her two children, and that makes her feel more guilty.
That's not for you to hold. I just want
Yeah,
to say that.
yeah. You know, coming from that guilt, like you're saying, that guilt is, but I do not hold it against her. Yeah, they already, a lot of times when you're coming out of the recovery of addiction already, it's a personal, you know what I mean? All the things that you couldn't show up as your best self because of your addiction. And you're trying and so you do have family. Is the blessing when you do have family members that can step in and want to help you, with the child or what have you. But like you're saying, it's not for the person who helping to hold, what you're doing to help that person. But just trying to make sure they have a relationship. Like, I feel like if you're doing that part, is no guilt for you to hold. You already showing up, and doing your part, and you're helping with the children or the child, but you're trying to make sure they still have a relationship. Because you're so close to it, you may have to step back. Okay. You said it to her. Okay. Yeah. It's a very, that right there that's a good one. It actually will be on here, February 1st. So come back. Actually have, we're going to be talking about addiction. That's our topic. So we're going to elaborate more, and I will make sure that I write this question down to make sure that we address it even, because it runs so deep when it comes to addiction. It's like a whole nother topic, because guilt it's so much, that addiction part, and guilt, it runs so deep from the mother to everyone that's attached to, like you said, with the child. And so, but that guilt and mothering, whether with the family or just the mother, it's shame in it too.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of shame attached to it. So you remain in silence about a lot of things because you're tiptoeing, and trying to, you know, make sure the well-being of the child, but then at the same time, you know, when it's come to the perspective of the person who's a recovery addict. So we can go on, and it's so much to that, but that is so good. It is so good.
I just want to say,
it does
I'll
run
make
very deep. It runs very deep. It runs very deep.
Nikki, I was going to say, I'm going to try to catch that conversation, because also within Black families, we never talk about addiction until it's too late, where there may have been a loss or something's happening where homes get disrupted, and somebody in the family has to step up and take on, you know, the parenting or caregiver role. So we also need to start talking about maybe addiction runs in our family. Maybe there's some stuff that we've kept in the closet that we're not aware of. But that's how we ensure that families get healthy. Normalizing these conversations are important.
And that's why I said I really appreciate you bringing it up. Like, because like I said, from the time that I thought about the, you know, the stillborn and the miscarriages and women that can't conceive, that mom guilt. But addiction is so much, not just mom, but parenting, because it's, you know, this is a mom and a dad thing, but it's because there's so much damage that does take place attached to that person, you know, with the addiction, and especially if there's children involved. And then it can be, and if it's not the proper healing, it's a generational thing. It does not stop. So a lot of my clients are now addicts themselves because of the parents or the auntie or whomever raised them, and it becomes a generational, you know, it doesn't stop if we don't talk about it, if they don't get the proper healing. And it is, and so when you talk about the foundation, that is damage, and if it's not repaired, like, you go back to, where did it start, where does it stem from? And it's like, oh, I'm talking about my mom, she's just recovering, you know, she's 60 and here you are 40, but your mom was the one who introduced you to this alcohol, because they gave it to you at 7 so you can run around and act silly and then go to sleep and get out their face. And they, you know what I mean? So it can go so deep. You know what I mean? So
the trauma, people are numbing with addiction. You know, we don't talk about that, whether it's alcohol, whether it's substances. And so that's why mental health is so important. You know, people being able to have a space to really process their feelings.
Their reason of even starting to self-medicate from the beginning,
yes,
and their trauma or what they might have sexually, it can go, you know, but we're going to come back. Addiction is a topic we will be bringing in February. I believe it's February 1st. It is it's a generational thing. It runs so deep. It can go, we can be on here for a good while. But there is mom guilt attached to that. It's more than just mom guilt. It's a lot of guilt all the way across the board. That's attached to addiction. So definitely come. I'm gonna make sure that he said, I know my mom's whole story. Yep. And that's why I want her to release the guilt. Yes. And you doing the first part. I'm going to say that. Not being silent. People are so shameful, and this stuff will go on within their family, generation after generation, and they're so ashamed, and they don't want to talk about it, and the guilt is swallowing them, it's drowning them, and it just go on for generation. So you just speaking out about it, or even just wanting it to be more of a topic, you're removing the stigmas that's attached to, you know, addiction and recovery. There's so many, you know, moms, great moms, not just, you know, all walks of life of moms that have dealt with addiction. And I can even talk about somebody like Whitney Houston, and then how her daughter, you know what I mean? That's somebody who's known all around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Running deep, it can run so deep. And so I just want to say kudos to you, and definitely come back for that conversation. Come with your questions, write them down. We definitely bring it back, and I will let Kizzy know that, hey, people are waiting for that conversation. So we are bringing that to the platform about addiction and normalizing, just speaking up about it, like you're saying, in removing the stigmas. There's so much stigma attached to addiction and recovery. I will bring my mom with me. Yes, make sure she joins. I think we touched on a lot of areas. I didn't think, mom guilt, when we started thinking, I was like, wow, mom guilt can go, it can be attached to so many things. And I pray that you all were able to walk away with something. Please let them know how they can get in touch with you. So we talked to so many, that working mom, the mom trying to carve out space for themselves, the mom who wants to conceive and can't conceive, the mom who may have lost a child, stillborn, miscarriages, even addiction is. That guilt can be attached in so many ways. We have, Anisha Williams on here. She's a licensed clinical social worker who specializes in this area, how to deal with it, depression, anxiety. Let them know how they can get in contact with you, Queen.
Yes. So, of course, you see my name up on the screen, so the womb therapist. And then also, I'll put my email right here in the chat. Reach in if you have questions. I just want to say that I'm grateful that you created this space, because oftentimes I think moms get forgotten, and they're holding so much, and people sometimes just see them just moving and doing that they don't realize maybe there's some internal stuff going on. So I hope that you all share this with someone you recognize, and just begin to honor them. Don't wait till Mother's Day, to honor individuals, or check in on them. Ask them, what do they need? Do you need anything? Anything I can do for you?
So good. So good. So definitely stay connected. We will be bringing back these lives. I think it's so many conversations that needs to take place, and this is what the platform is for. And that's why I've always talked about, I said, ultimate guide to mental wealth, because there's so many. It runs in so many areas. Mental health is attached to so many aspects of our lives, and so we got to, really take care of ourselves and really prioritize every perspective of our mental health. So we are the Raleigh Up Magazine. I'm Nikki, the founder, ultimate guide of mental wealth. Connect with us. We come out quarterly. We're looking for guest writers. So our mental health professionals out there, or even warriors, you have your story. We are the platform for that. So, make sure you connect with us, Raleigh Up Magazine at Gmail. If you want to submit, the information's on the website, Raleigh Up .submissions@gmail. You want to submit an article, the detailed information is there. Subscribe, talk about us. We're rallying up to save lives. It's a movement, y'all. Rallying up everyone to remove the stigma, normalizing a conversation around mental health, around healing. It takes a village. I can't do this by myself, and that I started this because of how lonely it was. I would say it was like maybe almost 15 years ago. Just kind of when I was a black sheep, when my daughter first attempted suicide, I didn't have this support like it is now. The media and everything is so swimming with about mental health, but when it came to my doorstep, it wasn't a magazine. It wasn't nobody talking about it. In fact, my family was even shameful about what we were going through when it came to my daughter and her mental health. She was the black sheep. Our family was the black sheep. It excites me to see this. So I like to highlight people like Anicia and all the other people that was featured on the cover. So connect with me. Let me hear about what your story is. I would even like your story, Miss Washington, and just kind of like highlighting around addiction. It's so much things that we can talk about, and that is what we do for Raleigh Up Magazine. So there's so much more that's coming down the pipe, and I just thank you all for your support. Subscribe, get a t-shirt, the Raleigh Up to Save Lives t-shirts. All this go back. I was raised in DC. So I try to, support those underserved communities, the ones that was overlooked, where we deal with these adverse childhood experiences, and trying to get back to the youth and the young adults before we get to this part of adulthood where we just jacked up, so creating those programs and trying to go back to where they can't get the guidance that they need. So your support. So Rally Up Magazine is a product of We Fight Foundation. And so we use the funds that we get from the features being featured in the magazine, the purchases, the t-shirts, and all that to go back into the foundation. So it's a tax write-off. So anything you give to Rally Up, you get a tax write-off, and you're helping a family. So we're going to be starting a sneakers drive. So we're going to need y'all to help us buy some sneakers. These are things that the kids are bullied about, so all the things attached to trying to make their lives better so they can have a more thriving and prosperous life. So I appreciate all of y'all. This is Nikki Raleigh of Magazine. Join us again. We got a conversation coming soon. Thank you, Queen.
Thank you.